My name is Luke. I was 29 years old when this happened. Hunting had never been just a hobby for me. It was something I returned to every year like a reset button, a way to slow my thoughts down and remind myself how to breathe again. At least once a year, usually in November, I drove north and rented a small cabin tucked deep into the forests of Maine. I never bought my own place up there. It didn't make sense financially for a single trip each year. Renting a secluded Airbnb for a long weekend was easier, cheaper, cleaner. For a long time, I didn't go alone. I used to hunt with my uncle. He was the one who taught me how to move quietly, how to read the land, how to sit still long enough that the woods would forget you were there. But in recent years, his health had started to fail him. Bad knees, shortness of breath. Long days in the cold were no longer something his body could handle. So, eventually, I started going by myself. I told myself I liked it that way. The silence, the isolation. But I don't think I really understood what being alone out there actually meant. The last time I went hunting was in 2022. I arrived late on a Friday night. By the time I turned off the main road and onto the long stretch of private dirt road that led to the cabin, it was completely dark. My headlights were the only source of light, cutting a narrow tunnel through the trees. No houses, no streetlights, no distant glow of civilization. Just forest and silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that feels heavy, like the world is holding its breath. It was late November, which meant no bugs, no crickets, no wind through the leaves. Just the sound of gravel crunching under my tires and the low hum of the engine. The cabin finally came into view, barely visible until my headlights washed over it. I parked as close as I could and stepped out into the cold night air. It smelled like damp earth and pine. The owner had told me the key would be hidden under the mat. It was. Inside the cabin was warm. The heat was already on, which I appreciated more than I expected. Maine gets bitter cold in November. The place was small, one bedroom, a bathroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living area with a love seat. But it felt comfortable. Safe, at least it did at first. I carried my bags into the bedroom, unpacked my gear onto the bed, and set my alarm for dawn. In my experience, early morning was the best time to hunt. My uncle always said you could find a deer, or even a moose, within 10 minutes, or not see anything for 10 days. Luck mattered more than skill. I was awake the moment my alarm went off. Within half an hour, I was already in the woods. Everything felt unfamiliar. Even though I'd hunted plenty of times before, this place felt different. The trees were dense, the terrain uneven. Every snapped twig made my muscles tense. I moved slowly until I found a large blowdown. Several fallen trees tangled together and posted up behind it. From there, all I could do was wait. That's when I heard a voice. "Hey!" It came from behind me. My heart jumped so hard it felt like it slammed into my throat. I spun around, adrenaline flooding my body, and saw a man stepping out from between the trees. He had gray hair and a weathered face, like someone who'd spent most of his life outdoors. He looked to be in his 50s, but there was something in his eyes that immediately made me uneasy. Something sharp, hostile. "What the hell are you doing here?" he asked. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. There was anger in it, slow and controlled. I told him I was hunting. He stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head. "Hunting's restricted here." My stomach dropped. I honestly didn't know that. I tried to explain, telling him I was unfamiliar with the area, that I'd rented a nearby cabin and thought this land was open. He took a step closer. "I watched you come up here," he said. The words didn't sit right with me. "You watched me?" I asked. He ignored the question. Always out-of-town people, he muttered, coming up here for the wrong reasons. The way he said wrong reasons sent a chill through me. I apologized, told him I'd leave immediately. As I packed my things and started walking back the way I came, I glanced over my shoulder. He was gone. No footsteps, no movement. Just trees standing silently where he'd been seconds before. I didn't argue with myself. I drove to a different park that, according to a website I'd checked earlier, allowed hunting. I saw nothing. No tracks, no movement, nothing. By midday, hunger and frustration drove me back to the cabin. That's when I noticed the door. It was unlocked. I stood there for a moment, staring at it and trying to convince myself I'd simply forgotten to lock it. But I always locked it. Inside, something felt off. My bag's zipper was open. A few things looked like they'd been moved. Nothing was missing, but the feeling wouldn't go away. Like someone had been there. Like the cabin itself knew it. I checked every room. Nothing. I told myself I was imagining things. Still unsettled, I drove into the nearby village, grabbed Chinese takeout, and returned to the cabin. I ate quickly and laid down for a short nap. When I woke up, dusk was settling in. I went back out to hunt. Still nothing. That night, after cooking dinner, I sat on the love seat with the TV on in the background. An old black and white movie played quietly, but my thoughts kept drifting back to the man in the woods, to the unlocked door. Eventually, I brushed my teeth and moved to the bedroom, letting another movie play as I lay down. I was drifting into that half-awake state where dreams start blending with reality, when I heard it, a soft click, like a door opening. My eyes snapped open. The closet door was cracked open. It hadn't been like that before. My heart started racing. This time I didn't brush it off. I reached into my hunting pack and grabbed my CZ-75. My hands were shaking as I turned on the light and aimed at the closet. "Come out," I shouted. "Now, or I'll shoot." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door slowly pushed open, and the man from the woods stepped out. He smiled. A crooked, unsettling smile. One of his front teeth was missing. "You got me," he said. I thought fear had already found me in the woods, but I didn't realize it had followed me back inside. For a second, I couldn't move. My arms felt locked in place. The weight of the gun suddenly unfamiliar, heavier than it should have been. The man stood there in the doorway of the closet, half lit by the bedroom light, half swallowed by shadow. He didn't rush me. He didn't raise his hands. He just stood there smiling. A slow, lazy smile like he'd been waiting for this moment longer than I had. "Don't move," I said again, my voice louder this time, sharper. "Don't take another step." He lifted his hands slowly, palms out, but the smile never left his face. "Relax," he said. "You don't need to do all that." My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I backed toward the nightstand without taking my eyes off him, reached for my phone with my free hand, and dialed 911. The operator picked up almost immediately. "There's someone in my house," I said. "He broke in. I'm armed." The man's eyes flicked to the phone. "Sheriff's department is on the way," the operator said. "Stay on the line. Do not approach him." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My entire focus was on the man in front of me. "Put the phone down," he said quietly. "Shut up," I snapped. "Don't talk." He chuckled, a soft sound, almost amused. "You people come up here," he said, ignoring me, "thinking this place is yours. Like the woods are just some playground." "Shut up," I repeated louder now. "Sit down." On the floor. He tilted his head, studying me, like he was deciding whether or not I was serious. Slowly, he lowered himself to the floor near the bed. I kept the gun trained on him the entire time. The minutes that followed felt endless. Every sound outside the creak of the cabin, settling the faint hum of the heater, felt amplified. I was hyper-aware of everything. The smell of the room, the way my finger rested near the trigger, the rise and fall of his chest as he breathed. "You know," he said, "after a while I saw you when you first drove in." My stomach tightened. "I see everyone who comes up that road." I told him to stop talking. He didn't. "You locked the door," he continued, "but you didn't check the back window." Cold spread through my chest. "I didn't take anything," he said. "Didn't need to. Just wanted to make sure you understood. Understood what I demanded before I could stop myself. That you don't belong here." The operator's voice came through the phone again, asking me to confirm my location. I answered as quietly as I could, giving directions, landmarks, anything that might help them find me faster. The man laughed. "They'll take their time," he said. "They always do." The wait stretched on. 10 minutes. 15. My arms started to ache from holding the gun steady, but I didn't dare lower it. I watched his hands constantly, every small movement sending a spike of panic through me. Finally, distant headlights cut through the darkness outside the window. Red and blue flashes followed. Relief hit me so hard my knees almost buckled. "Sheriff's here," I told the operator. Moments later, there was a loud knock at the door. "Sheriff's Department." I shouted back, telling them where I was, that I was armed, that the intruder was on the floor. They entered carefully. Commands were shouted. The man was pulled to his feet, handcuffed, and led outside. As they passed me, he turned his head just enough to look at me. The smile was gone. In its place was something worse. Something flat. Empty. The deputies took my statement while another searched the cabin. They told me it was a clear case of breaking and entering. Trespassing at the very least. The man claimed the door had been unlocked. I told them I didn't believe that. Later, the Airbnb host arrived. He seemed more upset about his property than about what had happened to me. He insisted there were no spare keys, no way anyone else could have gotten in, unless I'd left the door unlocked. He asked if anything was missing. Nothing was. That bothered me more than if something had been stolen. I didn't stay another night. I packed up my things and left before sunrise, driving south with a knot in my stomach that didn't ease until hours later. Even now, I still think about what would have happened if I hadn't woken up when I did, or if I hadn't been armed, or if he'd decided not to smile, and instead decided to move. I thought leaving that place behind would be enough. I was wrong, because months later I learned something about that cabin. Something the owner never told me. And that's when I realized the woods hadn't let me go at all. I didn't tell anyone what happened for a long time. Not my uncle, not my friends, not even my parents. I told people the trip had been uneventful, that I didn't see anything worth mentioning, that I just got unlucky that season. It was easier that way. But the truth followed me home. For weeks after I got back, I slept with the lights on. Every sound in my apartment made me sit up in bed, heart racing. The soft click of my heater turning on, the creak of the floorboards as the building settled. Even the sound of my own breathing sometimes startled me. I kept thinking about the way he smiled. Not nervous, not afraid, like he'd already won something. About 2 months later, I got an email from the Airbnb host. At first, I thought he was just following up, maybe asking for a review, maybe apologizing. Instead, the subject line read, "Question about your stay." I almost didn't open it. The message was short. He asked if I had noticed anything strange while I was there. Anything broken, anything missing, anything unusual. I stared at the screen for a long time before responding. I told him about the unlocked door, about the things being moved, about the man hiding in the closet. His reply came much faster than I expected. He said the deputies had contacted him again. Apparently, the man they arrested had been questioned more thoroughly. He was local, lived alone, no criminal record worth mentioning. But he'd been connected to other complaints: trespassing, harassment, watching people's properties. always near that same stretch of forest. Then, the host added something that made my stomach drop. He said this wasn't the first time a guest had reported feeling watched at the cabin. It wasn't even the second. There had been others over the years. People who said their doors were unlocked when they came back, that their belongings had been moved, that they'd heard footsteps at night. One couple checked out early after hearing someone walk around the cabin for hours. Another guest claimed they woke up to find muddy footprints on the floor. The host insisted he thought they were exaggerating. Overactive imaginations. City people unfamiliar with the woods. He apologized. Too late. I didn't respond after that. That winter, I stopped hunting. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the pull of the woods when the cold came. Instead, I felt relief staying away from them. But the dreams didn't stop. I kept dreaming I was back in the cabin, sitting in the dark, listening. In the dreams, the door never opened. Something just breathed on the other side of it. Sometimes, I'd wake up convinced someone was standing in my bedroom watching me sleep. I'd reach for my phone, my heart pounding, only to find nothing there. Eventually, I told myself it would fade. It didn't. The following fallout of habit, more than desire, I checked the listing online. The cabin was still there. Same photo, same description, but the reviews had changed. Buried between 5-star ratings were comments that felt familiar. Beautiful place, but the area felt unsettling. Great cabin, but we didn't stay the whole weekend. Hard to relax at night. Then, I saw one review that made my blood run cold. An older man confronted us near the woods and told us to leave. Said we didn't belong there. I closed the page and didn't look again. I hunt now, but never alone. I don't rent secluded cabins anymore. I don't wander unfamiliar land without clear boundaries. And every time I step into the woods, I pay attention to the silence. Because I've learned something most people don't want to believe. The woods aren't empty. They remember who comes and goes. And sometimes, they send someone to remind you. Even now, years later, when I think back to that night, I don't wonder what would have happened if I hadn't woken up. I wonder something worse. How many times had he stood in that closet before someone noticed? And how many times did he watch people sleep? Without ever being seen, I tried to move on. That's what people tell you to do after something like that. Time heals. Your brain just needs to settle. But time doesn't erase patterns. It only gives them room to repeat. Almost a year after the incident, I finally agreed to meet with a deputy who'd been involved that night. He had tracked me down after I asked a few questions through the sheriff's office. Questions I probably should have let die. We met at a diner, halfway between where I lived and where he worked. He looked uncomfortable the moment I mentioned the cabin, lowered his voice, glanced around. "You're not supposed to know this," he said, stirring his coffee even though he hadn't touched it. The man they arrested that night had never been charged with anything serious. Breaking and entering didn't stick. No stolen property, no forced entry, no physical harm. He was released, but that wasn't the part that made my hands go numb. The deputy leaned closer. They couldn't prove how he got inside, he said, because every time they checked the cabin, there were no signs of entry. No broken locks, no damaged windows, nothing. I told him that didn't make sense. "That's what bothered us," he replied, "because when we went back later, months later, we found something." He paused. Every closet in that cabin had scrape marks on the inside of the door frame, like someone had been opening and closing them from the inside. I didn't speak. They were old, he continued, years old, layers of them. My coffee sat untouched in front of me. Then he said something I still hear in my head when it's quiet. "That man didn't break in to hide," he said. "He'd been hiding there long before you arrived." I went home sick that night. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every detail, every sound, every feeling. The unlocked door, the moved items, the closet, and then I realized something. When I'd gone back to the cabin midday, when I found the door unlocked, I never checked the closet. Not once. A few weeks later, curiosity or something darker got the better of me. I searched public records. The cabin had changed owners 3 times in the last decade. One owner sold it suddenly after personal reasons. Another died of a heart attack. Another moved out of state and never rented it again. Buried deeper, I found an old missing persons report. A seasonal caretaker, male, late 40s, last seen near that stretch of forest. Never found. I don't hunt in Maine anymore. I don't rent remote cabins, and I don't ignore small things like doors being unlocked or items being slightly out of place. Because here's the part that still keeps me awake. The night the man stepped out of the closet, he didn't look surprised. He didn't look cornered. He looked interrupted, like I'd woken up before he was ready. And sometimes late at night, when my apartment is silent and the air feels heavy, I swear I hear it. A soft click, not a door opening, but a closet door being closed. Some places don't need locks. They just need patience. And whatever lived in those woods, whatever learned to wait in the dark, it doesn't belong to that cabin alone. It belongs to anyone foolish enough to believe they're ever truly alone.